Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Startups Founders podcast by Inside the Product. My name is Juan, and I am your host today. And today we are joined by Jonas from Beazy. I'm going to let you, Jonas, introduce yourself because I'm pretty sure that you're going to do it way better than I could do it.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to be here. Yes, so my name is Jonas. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Beazy. So Beazy is an all-in-one platform for teams to plan, produce, and deliver content. So we're trying to build the operating system of the creative industry. That's the short version.
So that's great to hear. But maybe a little bit for people that might want to understand a little bit better. What are you doing at Beazy? What would be a little bit maybe the long version of maybe 1 or 2 minutes? What is Beazy's value proposition? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So I know it can get a little bit confusing, but yeah, Beazy is kind of like a SaaS-enabled marketplace, let's say. So we have customers like Zalando, H&M, Gorillas, Pinterest, Babbel, and many more that come to us to produce high-quality photos and videos they need, not just in Berlin or Europe, but everywhere in the world. And so they come to Beazy. They can find, they can get access to a network where they can see all the creative suppliers they need, all the locations and equipment as well. So all type of suppliers they need for any type of production, hire them, book them, communicate with all those people, and then actually have all the digital tools necessary to manage those productions over multiple weeks, over time, and both remotely and at scale as well. And then on the other side, we have agencies and freelancers like photographers, filmmakers, location owners, and many more that use Beazy not only to find new customers, but also manage their business on the day-to-day. And so we're hoping to get to a point where like business owners kind of need to open Beazy in the morning the same way you and I might open Slack or HubSpot, for example. So really becoming like a central part of their daily workflow. And then little by little, we kind of like build this operating system where you have everything you need to navigate the creative industry in one single platform.
That sounds great. And actually, with the names that you have mentioned, especially Zalando, I don't know if people in the audience, if they are maybe not in Europe, I don't know how aware they are of Zalando, but Zalando is definitely a huge player, at least in Europe. So that's pretty impressive, I had to say.
Thank you. No, yeah, we got lucky because we went through many different pivots. We've been here for a couple of years already, like 3-4 years at this point. So because of our community and stuff, we were lucky to kind of work with many different customers and many really cool customers. Yeah, Zalando, H&M, Pinterest as well. There's many more that are also smaller players working on really cool and interesting projects. Sometimes, music videos, independent movies, those are particularly interesting, let's say.
That sounds really cool. So how did you come with this idea? What is the, I talk a lot about product and product management and how to create products. It's like, okay, so how did you identify this problem or need out there that some potential users could be having? And why did you decide to tackle? And also you talk about pivoting. Is the first problem that you try to tackle the same problem that you're tackling at this point? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that story as well.
Yeah, definitely. So this might be a little bit surprising, but yeah, we had no idea about this problem. And so we actually, went through like 4 different pivots almost. So at the beginning, when we started Beazy, it had nothing to do with what we're doing right now. And so, just for the quick backstory. So I'm 23, actually. I dropped out of high school. So when we started Beazy, I was like 18, something like this. At that point, I dropped out of high school. I was doing parkour and free running. So like jumping on walls, backflips, that sort of stuff, So not doing a lot of stuff that my parents were proud of, let's say. And so that kind of got me into photography. And so I met my co-founder, Julia, back in Switzerland, which was studying neuroscience and bioengineering. She's a photographer as well. And so we met through photography, but we got a little bit too excited at the beginning. And so we wanted to work on just kind of like the equipment, photography equipment issue that we had. Like, we're broke students. Photography equipment is very expensive. So let's share this equipment and all these different things. But then we got too excited and we added a lot more stuff on top of it. And we kind of started working on what we call the Amazon of the sharing economy. That was bad. That was a fucking disaster. That really did not work. But with that project, we won 2 grants in Switzerland, which kind of got us started a little bit. And so we took that money, ran to Berlin, let's say, to launch in Berlin, which was a much better market. And so we kind of refocused on what we knew best, which at that point was Airbnb for photo and video equipment, let's say, like a peer-to-peer marketplace, right, for equipment rentals. So we did that in order to meet our first users. We started doing a couple different photography events. The first one had like 100 people in Berlin. So that went great. So we kept on doing them. We did over 65 events in like 2019, and we built a community of over 3,000 creatives. So yeah, it was fun. It was marketing, but it was also really fun, and you get a lot of feedback and advice from the community. And then community actually started mentioning, cool, we like the equipment, but we also want access to studios. So we're like, okay, fuck it, let's add the studio category, location. So we kept on doing that. And then end of 2020 maybe, we were raising an angel round, and in the middle of the round we pivoted to B2B. So that was another pivot. We pivoted to B2B for two reasons. The first one is that we noticed the peer-to-peer model works, but you really need like a lot of users in a very short period of time to be able to actually sustainably grow that business, right? And then the second one is that we had customers like Zalando, SAP, and Pinterest. They came to us because they were interested in the equipment and the locations that we had, but they also wanted the creatives, which thankfully we had through the community. So that's when we thought, okay, fuck it, all in one, let's go. And so that was another pivot. Last one, now I'm getting to it, is just that once we started doing this B2B thing, at the beginning, we did everything manually for multiple months just to learn as much as possible to kind of create those personal relationships, and very quickly realized, okay, the matching is not enough. These are complex projects. We're going to be working with multiple people, anywhere between 5 and 50 people for multiple days, weeks, sometimes even months. And so you need a lot of tools to actually manage those collaborations and those partnerships. So we started building those tools, quickly realized there's another startup in Berlin that is building in exactly the same direction as us, except we started from the marketplace, they started from the SaaS. And so we started using their tools, reached out to them for a partnership. We really liked each other, working in exactly the same direction, visions matched. And so we just ended up acquiring them. So that was pretty cool. And so then we spent kind of like the last year merging platforms, which was a nightmare, but we're finally there. It was very interesting, and yeah, we're finally here. So that was a long backstory, but yeah, we went through a bunch of different things, and kind of lucked out into just kind of stumbled into this.
You have such a really cool story. I had to kind of digress a little bit. Hopefully, the audience doesn't get annoyed about this. But we talked previously before this one, but I don't think that you mentioned that you have been doing this parkour and free running, which is super cool. Because I'm definitely not a serious free runner, but I come from gymnastics and calisthenics, and I'm going to this gym because there are hours for gymnastics. Well, there was not enough people for gymnastics. I ended up joining a group that there's more younger people that they are doing parkour. So I'm doing parkour in the gym, but I don't dare to touch concrete. It hurts so much.
But that's amazing. That's really cool to hear, and I love it. So many more and more people are kind of getting into the sport, which is really cool. And then starting into the gym is perfect, so you can kind of like try things out, get started, etc. And then one day, hopefully, maybe level up to concrete. It's not always necessary, but in the sport, people love to go to concrete.
They do. Every time I see the videos, the things that people are doing, I follow in Instagram a ton of accounts. It's just crazy. But anyways, really cool. Let's not digress too much in that topic. Maybe that's a different podcast then. But the things that you mentioned is just so cool. Like the journey that you have had is I think that happens to many companies that from the product that you see in the end, there's kind of necessarily not much relationship with what they started initially. And I think that kind of you're a good example of that how to learn from those changes. But how difficult it is for you, or it was for you and your co-founders to understand that, hey, now is the time to pivot. There is something that clearly maybe is not working, or it could work better. And now we had to make a tough decision to do it. And you seem to have done very tough decisions several times already, and getting you into the right direction. So can you tell us a little bit about those pivots, and how did you manage to know what was the right decision?
Yeah, no, of course. I would say maybe the really hard pivot is always probably the first one, especially as a first-time founder, because then you're very sure of your ideas, and you're kind of doing everything in theory, and you think everything makes sense. You have your pitch deck, your business plan, etc. And kind of as everybody in startup kind of learns and knows, at some point your ideas are not worth anything, and like your plan is not worth a lot. The second you actually start working on it, you kind of get slapped in the face with reality, you know. And so the first time it's really painful, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of discussions, etc. But little by little, you kind of get around to the idea. So I'd say the most important thing is probably communication between like in the team and with the co-founders and all those different things. But then once you go through it the first time, then it's really kind of you're not getting too attached to any specific ideas, but understanding that this is normal and we're just testing things and we're always kind of like iterating on the product and on the problem, talking to customers and yeah, and all that stuff, right? So it kind of gets easier and easier over time. And I imagine it's probably harder for first time founders than if you have a lot of experience in startups. But it's really that thing, like just kind of being very clear on what we're actually trying to do. What is the problem? When does it make sense? When it does not make sense? And I would say a lot of communications. Like if you communicate very well internally in the team, it kind of everybody knows something is not working. And so when an opportunity presents itself or when things are really going bad, it's kind of clear to everyone something needs to change. Maybe then we brainstorm. We don't necessarily always agree on like the direction, but at least everybody agrees that something needs to change, and then you can kind of move through it very, very fast. But if not everybody's on the same page at that point, then that can take months, and you might be dead by that point. So, yeah, moving fast is the most important thing. Worst case, you can always come back, but moving fast.
Yeah. So the funny thing is that having working in both startups and more like, let's say, established companies or companies that have been profitable for several years, uh, you can see many times that there are parts of the products or new features or even a whole new products that they release and they are not successful. And there's never like there is not that mentality, especially in maybe more traditional companies, to have that mentality of, well, we had to pivot. It's just more like, okay, we had to make it work, but there's not like a no, it's just not working. We had to change directions, and that's something that I find very admiring from the startups compared to more traditional companies. They willingness to learn and to change direction when, okay, clearly this new product that we launched is not going where we thought that it should go, and it's not getting product market fit and it's starting to change. So I think that's pretty cool, and that's very it shows the I talk always about this Eric Rice book, the Lean Startup, and this build, measure, learn, and learn from the things that are working and maybe the ones that are not working, and then from there change or not directions.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I would say maybe one thing, and at least from my experience in the startup world, is just kind of a lot of this comes from just not having money, running out of money, where you need to kind of do everything fast. But especially like you're always looking at like your burn rate and your runway and all that, and all those different things. And so like we only have 6 months of runway, for example. So it means we have 6 months to just at least make money, at least not die. And then once we're not dead, then we can do better stuff and we can pivot another direction. But priority number one is just staying alive. So I think Y Combinator has like this nice concept of like a default dead or default alive, right? So as long as you're still default dead, you just don't have a choice. And so you just have to kind of focus on the money. Everything is focused on the money. So no matter how much you like the product, if it doesn't work today, I mean, you just got to skip, just got to go to something that makes money where like you can at least keep operating, and then you can kind of move back to it. I just had like one little example on this. Is just at the very beginning when we focused on the equipment, we noticed quite fast that okay, the equipment is not going to work out, but we do still want to do this at some point. And so the equipment side, like the peer-to-peer marketplace, is still part of our platform still today, like 4 years later. It's still not really making us any money, but it's growing slowly, kind of like after all the rest. So that's not the focus of the company, but we still wanted to kind of like drag it along with us because we still want to solve that problem. So we know first focus is first making money, actually growing the business, actually being able to grow the team and pay ourselves and all these different things. And then once we're at that point, then we still have this on the back. So we didn't completely throw it away. You just kind of throw it at the back and it can still be there, but it's just like that's a B, C.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense because maybe the time to market at that point, for whatever reason, it was not the correct one. And that's something that maybe because it just grows slowly and it just needs more time, is something that you can tackle later on. But just tackling first the ones that are really going to get you that traction. So I think that that's very sensible. And I agree with what you say about about money and funding. With bigger companies or companies that are profitable, sometimes just making a product, especially if it's not extremely expensive, how to say, development for them, they just don't notice it that much. So they might spend 1 year of development with 2 or 3 teams. Okay, it didn't go anywhere, but yeah, it didn't break the bank, and the company already has a product that is profitable, and yeah, they can continue going on, and basically financials are not that heavily affected. it's not very good for the future of the company if
Mhm.
they continue in that path, though.
Exactly. But you can keep going for a little while before it becomes any sort of like big issue that somebody shuts it
Yeah.
down, right? That's sometimes the problem where then you have shitty products that nobody really uses, but it's still kind of there because why not?
Yeah, and that takes you to then technical depth and stuff like that, or quite messy products that
Mhm.
are difficult to use because of too
Yeah.
many legacy parts that were not maybe necessarily integrated
Mhm.
as maybe they should have. So maybe that takes me to
Exactly.
the other topic that you mentioned earlier. You already have an acquisition. Uh, so
Mhm.
you said you kind of pointed that it was not the easiest path. What would be maybe the takeouts that you have from that one? For me, at least when I have worked with companies that have done acquisitions and looking, for me, I was taking mostly look from the product side. How does it integrate them with the value
Mhm.
proposition that we have? How easy is potentially to even integrate
Yeah.
the products into the same offering and these kind of things? But also, it's interesting to know, okay, if you have other stories about the financials or something like that you think that is interesting to share, go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. No, I mean that's I agree exactly with what you said. And like, so in our case, for example, it was mostly focused on the product. So we acquired them because the products made sense, and so the products were very complementary. But I would say I'm glad we did that early because now I know probably not to do it again, or not to jump into it again. Because acquisitions, like especially on the product side, I think you probably have a lot of experience with this and probably know, but things are always much harder than it seems at the beginning. And things that on paper are like two perfect products that are complementary, etc. Once you get started, it takes months and even years to integrate to a point where like you start asking yourself, maybe we could have built this ourselves. Maybe we don't actually need it that much. Maybe that you buy a certain number of features or some number of things, and then you don't even move everything. Things get lost in the way, that sort of stuff. So it's really just my main takeaway is just really that everything you think is doable is 10, 20 times harder than it is, and things are going to take a long time to integrate. So at least on the product side, my learning is just like, unless it's an absolutely perfect fit, it's probably not worth it, or especially then if it's not something that you can just kind of send your users to and maybe monetize from day one right away, then it's probably not worth it. And it's really worth the conversation of like, can you build this yourself or not? Uh, yeah. Or then what is the goal of this? If you're acquiring for the team, for the brand, for the customers, those are very different things. But at least product wise, yeah, I would be very careful to do that, again. So I'm glad we did that when we're relatively small, at a relatively small scale, because I can see how that could take years and years of like a lot of people in a team. Yeah. How did do you have any particular experience or feedback on this topic as well?
Yeah, I think that for us, the ones I've seen generally have been similar. I think that probably the
Mm-hmm.
ones that I've seen that makes the most sense, it was when they just basically bought out the company. I'm not going to say names, but basically they bought out another company, and they just send a message to all the customers that in 1 year, or in maybe it was a little bit more than 1 year, this product is going to be discontinued. So there was a transition path to the
Okay.
main product that the company had,
Mm-hmm.
with discounts
That
and
is
stuff
cool.
like that. So probably that was maybe the most sensible one of buying the customers in a way
Mm-hmm.
of the other product, because the products were competing quite much with each other, so they were not extremely complementary.
Okay.
So I think that in that one, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
the easiest, to transfer those ones. And if there's one or two features that would be interesting to implement, I think that they were implemented and that was it. So there would not be too much
Yeah.
pushback against those maybe valuable or beneficial areas that
Mm-hmm.
the other product had, and the one where I was working didn't have. In general, the other ones that I've seen, they had not been very successful, and in
Yeah.
many cases, there there has been bought products, and products that I have worked with generally are B2B products, which means that you had to had
Mm-hmm.
like really good integration usually with all the tools that you're working.
Yeah.
And there has not even been very big efforts sometimes to even do that, because there was already priorities and other business areas that had to be developed, and then the integration was maybe as good as it was with the rest of the any other products. So then there's not a very
Mm-hmm.
great benefit on having everything in the same portfolio if in the end you don't have like a seamless transition from your own products, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Then the
yeah,
experience for
that
the
makes
user is
sense.
like,
That makes
well,
sense. Mhm.
yeah. So for the users, they can be going to your own products or they can be going to the other products because there's no apparent benefit in
Mhm.
having these ones. So I think that maybe what there is in Adobe, I think Adobe in general has good integrations between different products. I'm not an expert, so I might be completely wrong, and some integrations might be horrible. But I think that there are some of them that they're
Mhm.
working quite well. So then it kind of makes sense
Mhm.
for you to have that transition of, okay, I'm working in Premiere Pro and then I had to go to After Effects and blah blah blah, and then kind of works in the same project, but it doesn't feel like I am going to an
Yeah, exactly.
external product and then I do the things there. So I think that that's something that is
Mhm.
not paid attention to. And as you
Mhm.
were saying, there's no like good analysis or assessment on the impact that this is going to take. I agree completely that it's going to take
Exactly.
way more than you would ever think that it was going to take in the very beginning, for sure.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Maybe one thing then that we did that worked that worked quite well, but I think we should have kind of like extended was to have like different phases of integration. Let's say with like different steps. So before we finalized the acquisition, we kind of agreed to first work together for a certain period of time. We first start integrating something, sending users back and forth between two platforms and all those and all a bunch of the similar things, and then you kind of finalize the acquisition. And so I think we should have probably kind of extended the timeline by a lot, but first work together as partners, see that there is actually like a synergy. Users actually like it. They go back and forth. There is something worthwhile here for both companies, and then kind of escalate that little by little. But I guess, yeah, probably starting with like an actual partnership and actual integrations and first testing it out before committing to buying companies left and right. Yeah, because it does sound very exciting, to be honest. It was one of the most exciting things we've done. But yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm really glad we did it. By the way, I definitely do not regret it. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, but in any case, it's a learning process, and hopefully now it's working. So it was not one of those learnings that it ended up maybe in
Yeah, yeah,
not very successful one, but at least in a successful case.
yeah,
Uh, so I think that one thing that came to my mind now is that in the industry I was working before, many of the acquisitions were also done to capture new user personas, and that has not been. I think that that makes it difficult also to do the like porting of features. You don't want to necessarily put all the exactly same value proposition in one product to tackle way too many types of customers, because then it just complicates everything, and the product design many times starts to suffer because how to
yeah.
say, you start to complicate a little too much the experience for your previous users. So that's something to pay attention to, and I'm not saying that that would be a reason not to purchase, but definitely something to pay attention in how you're going to do that kind of diversification. Because I think that many companies, it's like B2B tends to be quite common, like, oh, we can now capture this other industry because I'm serving now. Okay, I was working for uh, software for construction. So it's like, let's say that we were working for architects. It's like, now we want to tackle structural engineers. Not exactly the same thing, not exactly the same needs.
Yeah.
Well, you know how it goes.
Yeah, we have
And that's an
exactly
example,
this
not
sort of
necessarily how to do it.
complexity.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I can definitely see this, and this is always like a big issue. And we have exactly this problem in BZ, kind of like the level of complexity, because we have a lot
Yeah.
of different personas. So we're working on like complex projects where you might have a lot of different types of suppliers, like photographers, filmmakers, models, makeup artists, location owners, equipment owners, partners, a lot of different people interacting together. So a lot of people that we need to onboard and target. It is messy, to be honest. And so yeah, simplifying everything you can is always best. Maybe just on the acquisition, it's linked to the acquisition topic, but I was just going to talk about like no code tools, which I think can help in this
Yeah.
situation as well. Like if you can just kind of build little no code tools on the side, for example, to just test with different personas, you can even launch it as like a separate platform, see if it works, and then slowly integrate or rebuild that into your main product. So at some point, we only had, for example, marketplace for equipment and locations. And so before we finished the pivot to B2B, we actually launched the whole freelancer and creatives talents marketplace, let's say network, as a separate platform, which was kind of, first it was a spreadsheet, which worked quite well, and then like just a public spreadsheet where people could share their contact information. Then we launched the no code as like the Beazy Gang, which is a completely separate platform. It was not integrated into anything. Since that started, we launched it in like a week or so, like bubble no code, so that went quite fast, at least just to test and validate. And then as it was working well, then we started slowly integrating it into the main platform and just kind of like moving it there. So now the Beazy Gang doesn't exist anymore; it's just part of the main Beazy product. But as you said, because we have so many different personas and everything you add kind of like adds a level of complexity, especially when it's different types of people with different customer journeys, etc. It makes your product very, very confusing to use for most people. And so it's best to take things slow and even build separate products that slowly you can, take time to figure things out and test it, I would say.
And I think that that's a great approach of building these MVPs to validate other potential problems or needs that the different user personas are having. And definitely using no-code tools is, I think that is a great approach. I haven't really used necessarily no-code tools as such. I have been using a lot of different mock-ups or prototypes or surveys or things done with Figma that looks like it is working, but it's not working, but it's not really a product. But I think that using no-code tools is also a great approach. It's like, do you then continue using those no-code tools within your product, or do you have to rewrite, or what is the approach then?
It depends on the size of the company and like at the stage you're at, etc. But yeah, a lot of no code tools, or at least kind of like specific no code features or workflows, etc., can actually scale to a certain extent quite nicely. So at the very beginning, that's actually how we started Beazy, was like built on like an open source or no code platform. And so we really thought this was only going to be at the very beginning, but then you start realizing, no, actually this can go quite a while, so probably much longer than you expect. So I would definitely suggest doing that. And so we still have bits and pieces of no code things all over our platform, actually. And every time we do new features, new things, when we want to test new things, we kind of always do no code first. And then if it works out, then we integrate it into the main platform and build it ourselves when necessary. But I saw companies doing, for example, like I met two women that were doing like a thing. It was like a marketplace to book psychotherapists. Different types of doctors and psychotherapists. And so they were doing like something like 1 million in GMV. They had not built anything. It was actually just like a landing page with a spreadsheet and a WhatsApp number. And that was pretty much it. But they managed to go to like 1 million GMV, sorry, with pretty much just a WhatsApp number and a spreadsheet and like a one-page landing page, So you see kind of some of these examples and you realize, okay, you can go quite far without actually building anything, So if you can do that, even just to test, I would definitely suggest doing that sort of stuff. And then once you get to that level, then you actually start building, because at that point, you know exactly what your customers want, you know exactly how you need to build things. But at the very beginning, whatever you build, it's not going to work out anyways, more than likely. So why waste time,
Yeah, I agree completely. It's like there's no point in start coding or developing, and that's something that you mentioned in the very beginning. That's like when you did your first idea, is like, well, that's going to be the perfect one, the one that works, and that has happened to me. Is that you think that, hey, this is going to work for sure because this is really a problem, and then when you start talking, like, no, or even you build
exactly.
a product, which I've seen also that the company goes builds a product. Or even I decided, no, we did this, we do it, we did it. Spend even sometimes months doing it. You release it, silence, like
Yeah,
silence,
nobody
and
cares.
nobody could care less about it. It's like, okay, maybe that was not that successful.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's
Yeah, no,
definitely a
that
very
makes a lot of
important
sense.
thing.
And this happens to everyone, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as you say, is that
Sorry,
with these
go ahead.
no-code tools, if you can build something quickly, and just test it and validate it soon, then easier. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you there.
Yeah. No, yeah. I was just agreeing exactly with that. But I was actually just going to add quickly that You can also just not build anything and start selling it before you even build it, which I think it's even the best, the better suggestion of like just having like a landing page with the value proposition, having like some sort of waiting list or something like this, and then just seeing if people are actually interested. Or some people sometimes build like landing pages. You have the sign up button or start using, it just doesn't work, but you just kind of track how many people tried clicking on it just to see how
Yep.
much of an interest you can get. So at least it takes you 30 minutes, 1 hour just to kind of put together a landing page. You can put together like 10 a day and just see which one, launch them on Product Hunt and just kind of like see which one kind of gets some traction, which one works, etc.
Yes.
Right now, we have a waiting list going for some new features we're launching. And it's the first time actually we do a waiting list for whatever reason. And I think it's the best launch we ever did. It's working much, much better than expected. And so now I regret not doing that earlier in the in our journey, to be honest.
That is definitely a very, very great point, and I'm very valid. I agree. That's just sometimes doing a little bit more like this testing of, okay, is there interest in this, whatever is what we want to build, this value proposition or product that we would want to build, and see what is the perception, if people would want to click on it or not. If nobody's clicking, probably not that much interest.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
that's
Yep.
really good. Yeah. So maybe one thing is like something that I haven't been talking much in previous podcasts to with other co-founders. I think that it's interesting to hear maybe from you, if and however much you can talk about it, is that how is it has it been for you to raise money or funds for your startups? For Beazy in this case, and what would be the experiences and tips that you would like to share with people?
Yeah, I mean, it's not been easy. It's not been a fun journey. But to date, we raised over €1 million. And so right now we're going to open a seed round, hopefully 2.5 million in the coming weeks or months. So sometime 2023. Um, I would say it's really hard. It takes a long time, and like when people say like this is a full time job, that's not a joke. It's like it's actually real, and yeah, I would say just get started as fast as possible. And it's definitely a numbers game. People kind of get too attached to raising from a couple specific investors, and you might have like a list of 5 people. If you only had like let's say 15 conversations, like 15 calls in the past month, that's not even close to being enough. And so like you see, unless you're like you already had like successful exits, successful products, etc., you're probably not going to be one of those stories where you raise a 2 million round in like 3 days, or like a week. It does happen, but that's not how it goes for most founders out here. And so it takes months and months and months, hundreds of conversations. So you should definitely have like 200 plus funds, for example, on your list that you want to talk to, and try to have 500 meetings if you can. You need to fill your calendar with meetings. Maybe one thing I would say is just there's no need to start too big, and just start getting money on board. Any check is a valuable check. In our case, we started with angels, and we started just kind of getting a lot of small checks, and kind of like we use convertible notes and safes, and we even sliced the rounds. So we took multiple slices of small checks, and then kind of got the cap on the convertible note, or the valuation, if you want, up with each slice. This is definitely something I would recommend. It's like a strategy that's recommended a lot by Elizabeth Yin from Hustle Fund, like tranching or slicing. It just means that each check you get, even if it's just €500, means that you need the next one a little bit less, and so then you already get this money in the bank. Just take the money; it increases your runway, puts you in a better fundraising position. But then also these people that are on board, even if they come in with like €500, they're actually super useful. So a lot of other founders might have a lot of feedback, huge networks, a lot of value to provide. They just can't write like 50K checks, but you should definitely take them on with even €500, €100, because that person can be super useful then later on. Or a €500 check can lead to a much bigger investment later down the road as well. So I would say just get as many people on board, get people from all over the world. Yeah, that's another thing. Like on our very first round, I think we got people from a little bit all over Europe. We got an investor from the US, from Indonesia, from Canada as well, a little bit all over the world, because we noticed like even just moving from Switzerland to Germany, the type of advice you hear from people, it's not the same at all. It's like a completely different world. And so then you change industries, you change countries, you change continents, and people have a lot of different advice. And so you just get all the advice you can get, and get people on board, and get those small slices as well, just small checks just to get things up, and just gotta take money on board. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think so. Just like yeah, many times sounds like everybody's thinking that no, you just had to. I cannot start if I don't get like 500,000 or 1 million. There's no way I can start a company because it's not gonna work. But yeah, I think that in the end it's just about the day to day and growing and seeing the continuation and just it's a little bit like they build the perfect product or build the perfect thing. So well, no, you go step by step and you move as you go and then you
Exactly.
learn as you go. Otherwise, it might be easier to get
Yeah.
set for
Mhm.
disappointment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was a really nice thing. Actually, I was going to say that. Yeah, that you don't need a lot of money to get started in most cases, and you probably don't need funding. At the very beginning, that's what we thought. Like we put our deck together, and like after 2 weeks, we're out there running around Switzerland trying to ask for like 1.5 million because we thought we couldn't build the product otherwise. That was absolutely crazy. And then you get started, and you realize, oh, actually, the MVP version, like the no code version of Beezy at the very beginning, maybe we put together in like 30 minutes. Once we actually got down to it and used no code tools, and then you start realizing, okay, now we can actually get some traction, even if it's just clicks or website views or people on the wait list or whatever. Then fundraising got all of a sudden much easier when you're actually moving forward. Even if it's just, oh, we have a landing page and we have 50 people that saw the landing page, all of a sudden from the investor point of view, you're doing something. You're moving forward, you're learning things, and nobody has the expectation that everything is perfect. People, and looking at benchmarks is quite cool, because then you realize that everybody understands your product
So,
is
what do
not
you
figured out.
think, or
Nobody
what do you,
expects. Yeah. Mhm. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, the sound cut there for a moment. So, what do you think is the what the VCs or the angel investors are looking for more? Uh, because some people think that okay, I had to have like the perfect pitch deck, or I had to have some MVP to prove it. Is it that you had to show that there's numbers, that there's traction, that people are already either signing up for that potential product that you are going to build, or whatnot? What would be the thing, the what you think that the VCs are going to look for, and that they are going to value the most in your product? Obviously, traction and products already being available. I can imagine that that's quite relevant. But if you think at the very early stages,
Yeah, at the very early stages, I think the product, to be honest, doesn't matter at all. It's really more the two things. It's more kind of like the vision. Let's say, like, what are you trying to do? What is the big picture? Like, if everything works out in the best of worlds, where do you go? What are you trying to do? And then kind of the team, like, are you the right person, the right team to kind of to go and make that happen? So to prove, people always say team, and then it's kind of like confusing. Yeah, but how do I prove it? I think either like you can have your credential, like what did you do in the past? Maybe already have another startup, you went to like some great schools, or you have like a good background that we can clearly understand. This problem, this industry, we can bet on you. Or if, like in my case, for example, your high school dropout, I don't have much to show for it at the beginning. It's like, okay, let's just build some traction. Let's just show that we can do something. So that's when like building the product, even if it's not a good product or getting any level of traction, no matter how you judge that, even just 10 people on the waiting list, all of a sudden it shows, okay, they have a interesting idea, something exciting enough, and they look like they're moving forward to it, in that direction. So it might be a good bet. And then the deck in itself, I would say it doesn't matter. Like any of the documentation we might have, it doesn't matter in itself. It's just more like, can you get the idea across? And so having a good deck, it's probably the best way to clearly share the idea with somebody. But some people, like at the very early stages, for example, I noticed that many of the investors that invested in BZ didn't really look at the deck, but I had like a 5 minute pitch, like a recorded video, like a Loom video that I was sending, and people were looking at that video. So in that case, at that point, it was like enough and people liked it. But sometimes like they might want to look at different documentations. But the main thing is just making it clear for people like what you do and why you're the right person, or what your plan is. That's pretty much it.
yeah, yeah, that I think that makes
Mhm.
a lot of sense. That I agree with what you say about the team. Uh, I think that
Mhm.
that's something that maybe companies don't pay too much attention to. Is like if you don't have a team
Mhm.
that can work together, that know what are their
Mhm.
strengths. I mean, you don't have to have superstars. You just have to have people that can work together, can deliver. Because execution, being
Yeah,
consistent, and
exactly.
being able to focus on that vision, I think that in the end, that's what's going to matter the most.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. You just gotta show that you're a good team, you work well together, and you're making progress.
Yep. So how what are the roles then that you have with your co-founders? How do you work together? How do you think?
Mhm.
Uh, uh, what is the dynamics? Do you complement each other, or do you add on top of each other's strengths, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, definitely. So we're three co-founders. So I'm the CEO. Julia is the CPO, so she does everything product, and then Daniel is the CTO. And so we really complement each other, but we kind of separate tasks quite well. So like Daniel does, of course, well everything tech, actually platform architecture, actually building the product. Julia does everything product related in the sense of like deciding how things should work, talking to customers, understanding how things need to be designed, the user journey, all those different things. And for me, it's a lot of just talking and getting money in, either fundraising or marketing or sales, that side of the company, getting money flowing in one way or another.
No, that I think that makes a lot of sense. And in the very beginning, I think that probably those three are kind of a very good combination.
Mhm.
Somebody like a kind of product manager, product designer, somebody that looks more into the financial
Mhm.
and the business side, and somebody that looks more into the technical side. I think that gives you a very good combination of what you need in the very beginning of trying to build that product.
Mhm.
Uh, how did you manage to get like maybe on board like those first users and start monetizing the product? And now that you talk about bringing the money.
Mhm. I mean, at the beginning, people talk a lot about like doing things that don't scale, and I would agree with that strategy in general. And so that's what we did. Right when we showed up to Berlin, my co-founder Julie already spoke some German. For me, I spoke no German at all, and we didn't know anybody. So like the first week we arrived in Berlin, we decided to do a photography event in order to meet our first users. So for that, at that point for us, that was purely marketing. It was just okay. Like we know we want to try and get these creative people, these photographers. What is the best way just to meet a lot of them, probably to throw an event or something. It was literally like just a outside event, like a meetup, just to meet here, and 100 people showed up and let's shoot together. That's it. There was no organization, no budget, no nothing. And we just started giving flyers, and just talking to each and everyone. I was like, hey, do you know about Beazy? Hey, do you know about Beazy? Do you know about Beazy? And then just kind of like going one by one and doing everything manually, and then it kind of builds up from there. So the channels you use
Nice.
when you're
Yeah.
at like for going from 0 to 100 or 100 to 1,000 are not the same. Right? Manual
Yeah.
stuff at first works. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. So
Mhm.
we're kind of running out of time. So maybe I would like to have
Yeah.
couple of questions before finishing. So uh, if you now you have been going through quite many experiences with BC, if you have one recommendation for anybody that is either already a startup founder or wants to start their own company, what would that be?
I would say if you're planning on launching a company or any sort of a project or similar project like that, I would say just get started. The most important thing, I mean, at first, people never remember when you launch, right? So it doesn't really care. People kind of overthink the launch, but you don't remember Airbnb's launch or Facebook's launch or Uber's launch. Nobody cares. Just go and start. And then the other thing is also not overthinking the details. Just start. Everything else can be figured out later. Just start. That is the most important thing, I would say. And then once you're there, once you start running, then you'll figure things out. You'll improvise, you'll fall down and start and get up and run again and whatever. But if you don't start, nothing happens and you don't learn and you don't move forward. You just gotta move the needle a little bit every day, just a little bit.
Yep, I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's just the first jump, even if it's a small one, is the most scary. And I think that sometimes the
Yeah.
people get scared that it has to be too perfect. It's like, does it have to be too perfect? Does it have to be too big? It just has to start moving.
Yeah, exactly,
And
exactly. And nobody knows,
and
nobody remembers your launch exactly.
yeah, and if you think about okay, you have been learning, developing, as you said, you kind of drop out. What have helped you develop, learn? What are the things that you have used, resources? It can be either books, videos, or I don't know, courses, whatnot. What are the things that you think that have helped you learning and develop?
YouTube videos. YouTube videos are really great. It works a lot. It works very, very well. So YouTube videos are great. Blog articles,
Yeah.
podcasts, like this one, for example. And so it's really it's worth a lot just listening to other founders, talking to other founders, to people that went through this first. You might not agree every time, but just listening to it and understanding what experiences people have. And then I would say taking a lot of time to speak to other people. You learn a lot of things just going to events, meeting people, just having conversations and listening to these conversations.
Yeah, agree. I think that that's very key to how to say to network with other people, understand the experiences that they have. I think that that's really really important. And yeah, I agree with YouTube, and not just because I have a YouTube channel. I pretty much to learn many things that I've been
Mhm.
doing and what I've been learning in the past, also on product management and being a product director and all, so on. It has been many things related to
Mhm.
just what I've been watching and trying to just put it into practice, as you said, and slowly but surely getting a little bit better every now and then failing and trying to learn from the things that didn't quite work.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Maybe one thing
So,
just I wanted to add on this because
yep,
yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add just one quick thing on top of this is just that one thing people always kind of tend to forget is that in the startup or business worlds, most people kind of have an incentive to put on a good image and to kind of tell a good story that everything is going well, like publicly on podcasts, etc. For startup founders because you're fundraising and you need to kind of project this positive image. And so it's really interesting to talk to people at events or listen to these podcasts, etc., where then you listen to what is actually happening behind the scenes. It's sometimes very very different, and so when you learn the behind the scenes, that's when it gets interesting. That's when it gets juicy, let's say.
yeah. And in reality, that's kind of funny because, of course, you want to put that good image towards your investors. But the reality is that probably the investors had to know almost for sure, unless they're not very clever, that startups go through
Exactly.
many struggles and through many challenging times. And
Mhm.
that should be part of the actual
Yeah,
interesting thing for them to learn that, hey, you have gone through quite many difficult situations and you have learned from them. So that should be a good sign
yeah,
of a founder that knows what they are doing, because certainly it's not a straight and easy road.
exactly. No, I definitely agree. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So maybe one last question is like where people can find you, where people can find you, Jonas, as yourself, but also where they can find Beazy.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, on our website, so www.beazy.co, not .com, because we couldn't buy it, .co, so we didn't have the M. Somebody stole it from us, so that was a little bit frustrating. On Instagram, of course, we have a YouTube channel as well, with some podcasts, with some nice interview in the creative space, and then on LinkedIn, of course. And for me personally, yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way. Otherwise, you can always send me an email. It's jonas.ngoenha, like my last name, probably somewhere in the title or description, at beazy.co. And then feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if we can help out in any way, or if you need content, of course.
Awesome. I will put those in the description down below so everybody can find them and
Mhm.
just reach out if they find it interesting or if they want to discuss with you. Great.
Yeah,
Hey,
amazing.
Jonas,
Thank you.
this has been great. I think that this has been an awesome interview. I think that we have learned a lot, or I have learned definitely a lot. I hope people that are watching this one or listening to it, they also have learned a lot. I think that all the things that you had talked about, how you have been pivoting several times, acquiring companies so early stages, working with no code tools, talking about how easy or not that easy is to find the funding for your startup. I think that those are super relevant, especially for people that want to go through this journey. So I really appreciate it a lot, and thank you very much for being here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really great talking to you, and I hope people liked it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so for you in the audience, if you are still here watching us, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this one. If you have some startup founder or if you're a startup founder that you would like to be interviewed by me, just feel free to reach out. Uh, Remember to subscribe and like the video if you have enjoyed it, and to be reminded also for the next interviews. Okay, so See you next one.
See you.